Hello and welcome. This is Qtv News. I am Umudu Gajaga and thanks for joining us. First, the main local, international and sports news headlines. The Gambia Technical Training Institute GTTI on Thursday held its first graduation ceremony since it was founded in 1980. The Deputy PRO of the Gambia Prison Service tells QTV that his institution is adhering to the COVID-19 safety guidelines set by the Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization to prevent the spread of the disease in prisons. In international news, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres had said 6 African nations and Iran should lose their voting rights as required under the UN Charter after defaulting on their UN dues. We look at why fewer Africans are able to own land. In sports news, Right to Dream, a football academy launched in Ghana 22 years ago, has just signed the biggest investment deal ever by an African football academy. After low-scoring and goalless games, and now the goals have finally started to flow at this year's African Nation Championship in Cameroon, otherwise known as CHAN. Those were the main news headlines, and now the news in detail. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, and this is QTV News if you're just joining us. The Gambia Technical Training Institute GTTI on Thursday held its first graduation ceremony for 179 students in various departments at the institution. Babukar C attended this ceremony, and this is his story.
Although created in 1980 via an Act of Parliament, this is the first time the institution has held a graduation ceremony for its students. The 35th batch is made up of students specializing in various fields, ranging from general engineering, electrical and electronics, motor vehicle systems, West African rural development, law and HR, among other fields of study. Kinta Gomez is the ex-president of the Students' Union, whose executive started the initial planning of organizing a graduation ceremony.
This country's development, this country's forwardness will never be realized if technical education is not taken seriously. And so I join the thousands of want-to-be engineers, the thousands of want-to-be contractors, the thousands of want-to-be plumbers to say that we also matter. It doesn't necessarily mean that those who are in the formal sector are the only people, are the only individuals who really matter in life. But the informal sector is what matters the most.
John Luciano Bass, the outgoing president of the school union, said his executive struggled to fulfill their promise to the general membership due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but that nevertheless they have achieved a lot of success among them, as through the online classes they were able to ensure that learning would not stop. He also gave a word of advice to his fellow graduates.
We are going into the outside world to bear fruits. The land is green and fertile for all of us. Sitting and waiting to be employed by someone as a professional in your area of study should not be an option. We are trained to fight for ourselves and be obedient like a sheep. Let us all go outside there and start something for ourselves and contribute to the national development of this great nation, the Gambia. Anywhere we may find ourselves working, let all be disciplined, because we are still carrying with us the flag and name of GTTI.
Edward Mansal, the Director General of the institution, said his institution has contributed immensely to the socio-economic development of the country, saying this is down to his able staff of teachers. DG Mansal said the 2020 batch of graduating students are unique because, despite the hardship of the COVID-19 pandemic, the students remain focused throughout.
Knowledge is not power, but the implementation of the knowledge is the power. You have been empowered, the class of 2020, through the various lessons you've taken here from GTTI. But it is left, the onus is left to you to move out of the institute and implement the knowledge that you've gained in GTTI. If you do not implement it, then the power you receive from the lecturers here, it's meaningless. Let us never be betrayed in saying we have finished our education, because that would only mean if we stop growing. And indeed, this is a fact. Nobody could ever say that he has completed his educational pursuit. I think you can only do that when you are 6 feet deep
Ma'am Betty Gillen, a graduate who spoke to us on the sidelines of the event, said she didn't regret studying at GTTI, describing the institution as the best in the country and one that has the ability to transform students to be better. Ma'am Betty, who graduated in Human Resources Management Studies, called on her fellow youths to be steadfast and take their education seriously and urged them to visit the institution, who she said can transform one's life. The institution continues to provide relevant education and life skills to the country's growing youth population, having registered thousands of graduates from different fields of studies in both skills and other professional courses. The present government, through the Higher Education Ministry, has engaged the president on the progress of plans to transform the institute into a university to focus on science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Babu Karsi, Qtv News.
The Deputy PRO of the Gambia Prison Service has said that his institution is adhering to the COVID-19 safety guidelines set by the Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization to prevent the spread of the disease in prisons. Luke Jatta made these remarks in an interview with QTV, and this is the report. These archived pictures shows the inside of Mile 2 State Central Prison. Since the first case of COVID-19 was registered in the country in March 2020, prison authorities say they have put in place preventive measures to curb the spread of the disease in the main correctional center. The Deputy PRO of the Gambia Prison Service, Luke Jatta, says they are still continuing adhering to the safety guidelines despite the relaxation of some of the measures and restrictions.
COVID-19 pandemic here, the state of emergency that was sometime back in March precisely, that was a speech response to that. So to that effect, we employ all guidelines. Especially, you can affirm for me, like, whoever is entering the prison premises must be on face masks.
In order to ensure the safety of both inmates, visitors and prison officers, Luke says even prison visits were curtailed at some point at the height of the pandemic. Several donations were made by philanthropic organizations to improve sanitary conditions, especially the regular washing of hands.
At some point we cease because we want to see the magnitude of how it happens as things unfold in the Gambia. So what we did was a speech response. We said we want to make sure all visits are ceased for a while, and later on we lifted that ban, and then we allowed family members to come and visit their loved ones in prison. And then these are the best practices of doing in order to make it so that COVID-19 is free.
Despite the measures put in place, about 100 COVID-19 cases were registered in the prisons after a mass test was conducted.
Unfortunately, we were able to incur a few cases, and then we thank God. Precisely, it was 100 and so. But not a good number. But the mass test was done. Those were asymptomatic, and others also had. But to also some of the best practices that we employed, that has also helped to making sure that COVID-19 is setting up a passing principle, like face mask production that are ongoing. Organization came supporting, making sure even government, parastitial came over into also part of the work going towards the fight COVID-19.
Various sources for some prisoners to be released to lessen congestion in the prisons. For the moment, this does not appear to be an option under consideration. As fears grow of a second wave, or at least a rise in numbers, we will be keeping an eye on developments in our prisons and on whether conditions can be improved. Mamadou Gajaga, QTV News. We will take a commercial break, and when we return, the news continues with international news. Welcome back, and thank you if you're just joining us. This is QTV News. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said that 6 African nations and Iran should lose their voting rights as required under the UN Charter after defaulting on payment of their dues to the United Nations operating budget. More in this report.
Under Article 19 of the Charter of the United Nations, a member state in areas in the payment of its dues in an amount that equals or exceeds the contributions due for 2 preceding years can lose its vote in the General Assembly. Guterres wrote a letter to General Assembly President Volkan Bozkır of Turkey saying the countries in areas in the UN will have their UN General Assembly voting rights suspended in accordance with the UN Charter. The African countries are Somalia, which must pay a combined $1,443,640, and Libya, $705,391, Congo, $90,844, Zimbabwe, $81,770, Central African Republic, $29,395, South Sudan, $22,804, and Niger, $6,733. However, an exception is allowed if a member state can show that conditions beyond its control contributed to this inability to pay. 3 more African countries, Comoros, Sao Tome and Principe, and Somalia, fell into that bracket and will be allowed to continue to vote despite missing due payments after they sufficiently demonstrated that they are incapable of paying. Comoros owes $871,632 and Sao Tome and Principe owes $829,888. Of the defaulters, Iran topped the list and needs to pay $16,251,298. Iran has blamed the non-payment of UN dues on US embargoes, saying the funds designated for the United Nations currently remains frozen in South Korean banks. Despite this plea, the UN has not seen fit to include them among the countries granted an exemption. The annual operating budget of the UN is about $3.2 billion. The separate budget for peace operations is about $6.3 billion. Babakar Sise, QTV News.
And now to land ownership in Africa. Land ownership and access is increasingly benefiting only a few owners across the African continent, according to a study conducted by the International Land Coalition, ILC. In its Global Land Inequality Report published at the end of 2020, Mamoudou Mboj has more.
The richest 10% of the rural population control over 60% of the land assets, while the poorest 50% own just over 3%. According to the report that highlights the impact of land inequality on smallholder farmers, women and indigenous and rural communities. The researchers found that since the 1980s, land has become far more concentrated in the hands of a few, in a growing gap that drives many into poverty and hunger. The report points to a growing interest of companies in investing in agricultural land, which it says is the main cause for land inequality. Asia and Africa have the highest levels of small holdings, but over the past 4 decades, the shift from small to big, as seen in the United States and Europe, is spreading to the developing continents, which is accelerating the decline of soil quality, the overuse of water resources, and the pace of deforestation. The shift is also connected to social problems, including loss of livelihood, poverty, migration, and conflict, among others. The report cites an example in Kenya, in the northern coastal strip in the city of Mombasa, where it says apartment buildings and hotels are going up at a dizzying rate, but at the expense of fishermen, whose public landing sites for their boats have disappeared, lost to private construction projects. The director of a human rights organization in Kenya is quoted in the report saying, "Land grabbing has been a big problem in Kenya for years." Another cited example is that of the Kono district in Sierra Leone. At the end of the civil war in 2002, a diamond mining company named Koidu Holdings was the first company to invest in the lucrative diamond business. But, according to the coordinator of a civil society organization, Initiative Land for Sierra Leone, the company and its boss have had a difficult relationship with the community in the mining area ever since they arrived. The owner of the company is no other than the Israeli Beni Steinmetz, who grabbed the international headlines recently for being on trial in Geneva on corruption charges in mining deals. The company has caused much hardship for the local population, who have to contend with dust haze, water shortages, and economic deprivation, the report says. The Gambia has had its fair share of well-publicized land-related contentions, which led the government, jointly with the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, and the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, in 2019 to launch a $1.4 million 18-month project funded by the UN Peacekeeping Fund to address conflict over land and natural resources in the Gambia. Over 50 hotspots of land conflicts, some of which have resulted in the death of at least 4 people between 2018 and 2019, have been identified across the country, according to a report in the FAO website titled Leaving No One Behind, Addressing Conflicts and Violence Over Land and Natural Resources. The article also cites the 2018 Gambia Conflict and Development Analysis, which it says identifies land and natural resource conflicts as a priority area that needs to be addressed urgently to preserve social cohesion and peace. The Lands Commission has been formed, but so far there has not been any discernible differences to the tense situation. The chairman of the commission, Raymond Suck, in an appearance before the National Assembly Select Committee on Land, expressed his frustration over the commission's lack of teeth to do the job. The Minister for Lands, Mr. Musa Drame, who presided the project launch, in his statement acknowledged that inadequate legal frameworks and weak enforcement of existing land laws have led to unplanned and disorganized development in the urban areas and have caused loss of farmlands and increased the number of disputes over land. These deficiencies in land management have arguably encouraged a laissez-faire attitude in some owners of buildings, who build as they please, encroaching on public space, which some have complained is contracting at a worrying rate. News reports on land grabs and other misuse of land at the expense of local communities appear frequently in the national dailies and online. Unless words are translated into action and vested interests kept firmly in check, we will always live under the threat of random eruptions of land conflicts. For QTV News, I am Mahmoud Mbouch.
We will take another short commercial break, and when we return, we continue with sports news. Welcome back, and in sports news, a football academy launched in Ghana 22 years ago has just signed the biggest investment deal ever by an African football academy.
The Right to Dream Academy began life in 1999 on a small scale as a single not-for-profit football academy that trained a few boys on a dust pitch in Accra, Ghana. It was founded by Tom Vernon, who was Manchester United's head scout in Africa. Today, Right to Dream Academy can probably lay claim to being the most successful football academy ever launched in Africa. This week, the Mansour Group, an Egyptian multi-layered company worth billions of dollars, announced that it has invested $120 million to take control of the academy. And a reversal of the usual trend in sub-Saharan Africa, the academy has grown to such an extent it has spread beyond its own borders and acquired a football team in Europe and launched a branch in Egypt. Right to Dream has grown to such an extent that it has bought Danish top-flight side FC Deutschland in 2015. As a result of this latest deal, they will now build an academy in Egypt for boys and girls, with construction site in the west of Cairo, which is set to begin this year, ahead of an intended intake of students next year. The launch of a new professional women's football team in Egypt is expected to follow soon after. The academy runs a fully residential international school, which has grown to offer scholarships to talented children from all over Africa. The academy has a manifesto and an ethos that it says is about players and student athletes receiving the best possible development experience to give them the best chance of reaching their maximum potential via the academy model through education, football, and most importantly, in developing their character to the fullest. In terms of success, they are a model that must be the envy of all academies across the African continent. They have gone on to produce an array of successful players now competing at club and international level. By 2021, the Academy had produced 20 Ghana men's internationals since it was founded, including Kamaldeen Sulema of Danish top 5 side NC Nordjylland, Strasbourg's Abdul Majid Waris, Ajax Amsterdam's Mohamed Kudus, and David Akam, who plays as a winger for MLS side Nashville SC amongst them. A Right to Dream girls program was established in May 2013, and in July 2017, the girls team lifted the #1 cup trophy in Frederikshavn, Denmark, in what was their first ever European tournament experience. The Academy's founder, Tom Vernon, who would remain as the CEO, previously told the BBC that around 25,000 players are scanned every year before being admitted to the Ghanaian Academy, from where many have gone on to gain scholarships abroad, especially in the United States. Around 70% of Ghana's Right to Dream students come from families earning less than $2 a day. In that same BBC interview, Vernon had said, "I think African youth are really lacking a lot of high-quality role models. Hopefully, our systemic approach can say that there is a conveyor belt of kids who are ready to lead and to inspire. This is our definition of success, not how many players we can produce." End of quote. Mansour Group Chairman Mohamed Mansour is listed as the 7th richest man in Africa and 590th in the world, according to Forbes magazine. For QTV News, I am Ade Darami.
And still in sports news, after the opening single goal victories for host Cameroon and champions Morocco, followed by goalless draws, goals have finally started to flow at this year's African Nation Championship, otherwise known as CHAN. More in this report.
After a colourful opening ceremony, Cameroon gave their fans in the stadium and those watching around the world exactly what they wanted to see. A wonderful game, and for the home fans, victory. They saw their side beat Zimbabwe 1-0 in the first game in Group A. In Group C, defending champions Morocco started the defence with a 1-0 victory over Togo. It was up to the group's teams in Group D to show them how to score goals. In front of a limited number of spectators, Zambia defeated Tanzania 2-0 on Tuesday in Limbe, thanks to a Colin Sikombe penalty and a leg strike from Emmanuel Chabola. In the late kick-off on the same day, Guinea went above Zambia at the top of Group D with a 3-0 win against Namibia. There were 2 goals from Yakuba Bari, with Molai Sila also getting on the score sheet. The next Group D matches are on Saturday, as Zambia face Guinea and Namibia play Tanzania. In Group C, Yahya Jabrane converted a retaken and highly controversial penalty on Monday to give holders Morocco a 1-0 victory over Togo in Douala. A Morocco forward fell over after no apparent contact, but still got the penalty. It led to sarcastic comments about whether the VAR technology was working. Neighbours Rwanda and Uganda, who were coached by former Rwanda coach, drew 0-0 in the late Group C kickoff, and Rwanda looked by far the better side of the two and were unlucky not to win. Morocco will continue their defence of their title on Friday against Rwanda, and Uganda will be taking on Togo. In the clash of the Congos on Sunday, Chico Ushindi scored just after half-time to give the Democratic Republic of Congo a 1-0 win over Congo-Brazzaville and take an early lead in Group B. In the other game, Libya and Niger drew 0-0 in their opening group match. In Wednesday's games, Cameroon played out an entertaining 1-1 draw with Mali, and Zimbabwe are already out after a second loss as they were beaten 3-1 by a vibrant Burkina Faso side. The Zimbabwe side look a shadow of the side that gave Cameroon such a tough time in the first game. For us neutrals, the tournament is ticking over nicely and there's much to look forward to. For QTV News, I am Ade Darami.
Before we end this bulletin of the news, let's have a look at our main news stories. The Gambia Technical Training Institute GTTI on Thursday held its first graduation ceremony since it was founded in 1980. The Deputy PRO of the Gambia Prison Service told QTV that his institution is adhering to the COVID-19 safety guidelines set by the Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization to prevent the spread of the disease in prisons. And in international news, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said that 6 African nations and Iran should lose their voting rights as required under the UN Charter after defaulting on their UN dues. We also looked at why fewer Africans are able to own land. And in sports news, the Right to Dream, an African football academy launched in Ghana 22 years ago, has signed the biggest investment deal ever by an African football academy. After low scoring and goalless games, and now the goals have finally started to flow at this year's African Nation Championship in Cameroon, Chan if you like. That's all we have for you in this bulletin. Thank you very much for watching, but don't forget to join us at 10 for another bulletin.